Oh, well, all right. I guess we'll give everyone a minute. We'll give them a minute to come in.
Everybody needs to join.
Everyone does need to join.
Here are all the great things we have to talk about today.
All the great things we have to just make sure you keep that turned around. We don't need to be.
Yeah, we're not sponsored.
No, there's no sponsors.
Yeah.
We don't need lawsuits about getting sponsorships and endorsements.
I should make a sleeve.
This, however,
like Mason Mohan original.
Yeah, we'll get you. Yeah. We'll get you a custom koozie so we don't get hit. This is public domain, however, all the U.S. presidents. So we're covered there. All right, we got our live notification. We got our camera. We have sound. Okay, we'll go ahead and go. Yeah, I see some folks joining in there. All right, we'll get underway. Welcome. We got our 3 welcomes in.
Yep.
We went back and forth. Cool. Welcome to another Unauthorized Caucus. Thanks for joining us. It's Thursday. It's noon. It's caucus time. So we got a couple of things we wanted to talk about today. But let me remind you first, go and wherever you are, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the big red button on YouTube. Make sure you got the notification bell turned on Rumble, the big green button. Not the Hulk button. It's the Rumble button. And then also across Facebook, Twitter. Make sure and share the link. Tell someone that you're spending your lunch hour with Ryan and Mason, and we're pretty cool. We have a lot of neat conversations, but it is worth their time, too, to come and have some of these conversations as conservatives. And then, of course, go to phyllisschlafly.com. Why should they go to phyllisschlafly.com?
To read everything that we've ever put out, everything that Phyllis put out.
That, too. But mainly so that you can sign up for our email list.
That, too, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the email list. That little banner will pop down. Go and give us your name and email. We're not going to sell it. We're not going to trade it. And I won't let Mason email you personally. We'll make sure that all comes through group standards, but
no matter how hard I try.
Yeah, because otherwise he's just going to start sending you fantastic articles from the archives that you might want to read. And actually, that sounds like something maybe we should do.
Yeah.
So we'll have a potential highlight idea there. But go and sign up, and then we'll never lose touch with you. Even if YouTube and Rumble give us the axe, you will always be able to go and get us directly into your inbox, and we promise not to abuse that. It will only be relevant. But we had a couple of things that we wanted to talk about today that it's not really, it's kind of across the board. Like we got a lot of different things that this ties into, but we wanted to kind of go behind it and maybe just kind of postulate it. It's pretty subjective, the topic we wanted to dive into today, but there we go. Has the radical left finally pushed people too far across the board on a few different issues? And is it enough that we're going to see pushback in America? What do you think in general? And then I know we had a few things we wanted to dive into. What's your hot take on that?
Well, I mean, the left is always pushing really far, and I think every day more people get either radicalized or red pilled or whatever you want to call it because they see some new insane policy, some ridiculous headline, like child transracial surgery pushing preschool now. Like that's not real, but that seems like the kind of stuff we're seeing on a daily basis, and that is waking people up. That is making them realize, oh, this is ridiculous. We've let this get way out of control. But I don't think we're ever going to hit the point where enough people are just fed up and they think, okay, now it's time for the left to stop. And then the left is going to be like, okay, we've made too many people upset. It's time to stop. Because most people, they read these kinds of things and it's really an internal change in somebody, and they think that nobody else thinks like them because the left owns all the media, the academia, the corporations, all corporate advertising, and just pushing out these social messaging. So even when people are like, this seems weird, this seems strange, they think they're alone. And when they think they're alone, they're not really going to push and get active. So it's important that people actually share how they're feeling about these kinds of things, and point out absurdity to people that you know. And maybe they will have seen it the same way, or maybe they need to. And I think that's the only way for the right to actually start gaining traction, is to be honest with the people that you know in your life about what you think about what's going on.
Yeah. And we've talked about this quite a bit as Tucker has made his transition off of Fox and onto Twitter. The conversation has been pretty heavy that the truth tellers, loud truth tellers, are really needed. And I think that kind of speaks not just to people with a big megaphone and a big following like Tucker Carlson, but I think that speaks to all of us. The more that we don't say something, to your point, the more alone that you feel. Other people, oh, well, I'm the only one, so I'm not going to say anything. I mean, that's honestly part of the strategy that the left has used to browbeat people into submission, because first of all, it's incremental. We've talked about this a lot with the trans thing years ago, decades ago, when they first really started putting, homosexuals and And, gays and lesbians just want to be, not criminalized. They want to do in the privacy of their own home, whatever they want to do and have a relationship. Well, it wasn't just that. It was then the next step of it had to be public, and then we needed it to be recognized by the state. And now we're at this point where I'm going to change my pronouns daily and just defy biology. And it's not just that you have to accept that I'm doing it. I need you to embrace and affirm that I'm doing it. We've gone down this whole path. And that incrementalism, oh, well, I suppose that's okay if you want to do. People have accepted it. But then the further it goes, the more that you don't say something, the more that we don't talk about it, you really do feel like, well, maybe I'm the only one. It's incredibly important for all of us to be having these conversations, to be speaking the truth about these issues, to be saying, no, that's weird, or no, that's wrong. And we know what's right. Because we each need that kind of, these conversations. And it's not self-affirmation or echo chamber. It's actually, the problem is they're trying to create this echo chamber of wrongness or of immorality or, whatever it is. We have to fight back against that, which is why the censorship question is so important. It's because, as much as I'm not looking to live inside of a right-wing echo chamber, we can't let the left create an echo chamber either, where there is no getting into it from the outside. But those are the mainstream channels, because then a bunch of people get trapped in an echo chamber and don't realize it is.
Right. So if there's somebody that that you think might think like us, or that might need to think like us, that might be seeing these things and reacting, you should share this with them. Let them know they're not alone out there, and you should share your own views with them. But it's interesting because the strategy that the left is using, it goes all the way back to Lenin and even before, because the Bolsheviks, that translates roughly to majority, the majority section of their party. Whereas I do not think they were the majority when they took on that name in the revolutionary group. But it's just, they can browbeat people like, oh, we're on top, we're the majority. And that's what the left does. When the left took over all the institutions in this country, they weren't the majority. They were the tiniest set of radicals, but they got in the right places to make it seem like they rule the world. And now they do. So it's really just a matter of calling out the lie, the fiction that they've set up to try to keep us under control. They have all these systems of thought and these insults and these strawman arguments that they can use towards us that constantly puts us into submission towards them. But we don't have to submit.
Now, here's a question. Because again, like as the reason that this discussion got spurred is we were talking about the fact that we're starting to see kickback. States, the column this week, which, by the way, we're going to do something new. Instead of posting these links as we're going to put them in the comment. Everything that we talk about and reference, we're going to do afterward. It's going to make the conversation a little better, and we'll make sure that all of your links get to you. But we may send out a quick follow-up email. Hey, here's what we talked about in the show today. But we're definitely going to post it. The first comment on YouTube and Rumble each will be anything that we discuss that's a resource. I'll make sure that the link is down there so you can get to what we're talking about. But the column this week from John and Andy Schlafly, talking about the topic, transgender train derails in the 6th Circuit. But it goes in 20 states have banned now these irreversible gender changing procedures on kids. States are getting heavily involved. Courts are getting heavily involved. This discussion, that the tide is kind of turning back from the left, the wokest narrative on these things. So that's kind of it begged our question of, did they finally push too far? Because I personally know a lot of people who've kind of moved to some of the more, what I guess I'd call the bleeding heart liberal. I hate to say liberal. I try to train myself not to, because they're not. You and I, we're the liberals. We are the classical liberals who believe in liberty to do these things inside the constraint of moral law and understanding. They're not liberals. They're leftists. They're statists, authoritarians. But as some of these folks who kind of have the bleeding heart, social issues have always kind of been not the strict, strong conservative, blah, blah, blah. Some of this, you get into the transgender world and it's like, whoa. Okay, that's a little bit far. I'm seeing that with people who have just gone along with things, and now all of a sudden we found their line. So that's my question is, I'm curious, have we hit that across the road? And here's a factor I wonder. As much as people have gone along with what they're being told, do you think, as someone who's younger than me by a good bit, not a generational gap, but technologically speaking, a generational gap or two, which I'd argue that's every 4 or 5 years, we have a technological generation shift. Do you think that the current young generation, like college kids and just up, everyone, I guess, in the 20s decade, are they more apt to say, I don't believe what I'm being told, because they've been raised in the generation of Photoshop, video editing, now AI, all kinds of stuff where they know I'm automatically skeptical of everything because I don't know if this was computer generated or if it's real. Do you think that's going to make young people today more skeptical of the system, more prone to believing those of us who are like, hey, there's this big group of, the deep state is out to get you? Do you think that's actually going to help us, or is that not going to be a factor in the current discussion? I'm curious about that generationally.
Yeah, for some of them, certainly, yes. I think for a lot of people my age that have just gone through the universities in the last few years or still are, that a lot of them have faced a lot of indoctrination, but there's a lot out there who have very deeply ingrained conservative sensibilities, who they do see that the absurd level of disinformation and the BS out there, and they're realizing, okay, I don't really buy any of this, and it's going to create a very strong and skeptical conservative group going forward of people that don't want to deal with it. But for the most part, what I found is that most people my age are decently apolitical or lean slightly to the left. And because of that, it's important to share information with them about the insane things that are going on in this world, because these are people that otherwise might be very normal, very friendly, might even be Christian, but just because of the world we live in, they hold very slightly left-leaning views and wouldn't vote for Donald Trump, even though they might not vote for Joe Biden either. And it's important to share those things with them that, okay, when you don't stand up, this is what happens. Like in the case of, as we were sharing earlier today before we started, the CDC released a guide on chest feeding for transgender men, or transgender men that think they are women. And they...
Men.
Yes, men that... Yes.
Men. It was short.
And they get these bizarre augmentations, and then I don't know exactly how it works. Plus, it sounds kind of horrific, but I believe they inject this formula into themselves and then, give it to the baby in a way that simulates what a woman would do. Although it is an abomination and contrary to the way that God designed humanity to function in any sense. But the CDC, the people who were leading us, who everybody thought were saving us throughout the whole few COVID years, they're releasing guides on this, and there are obvious issues that you can immediately see this is absurd. And on top of it, it's, you wonder, how are these men that are claiming to be women even getting a hold of kids to where this is even a question? And B, why are they even getting a hold of kids to where this is even a question? And that brings up, there is an interesting study from 2020 from Harvard, I believe, that discussed that, or it analyzed the way that moral, what would it be? Like moral violations affect both conservative and liberals, and like analyzing the blood flow in their bodies. And you find that, a lot of it is like, okay, a lot of blood flow in the chest and in the head. And it varies conservative versus liberal. Like a conservative has much higher blood flow with violations of authority, whereas a liberal might with violations of fairness. But one thing it found is that liberals get a lot more blood flow down below. They get essentially sexually aroused at violations of moral purity, which is very interesting that they're getting, it's not just they're getting angry or excited, they're getting literally excited about violations of moral purity, which I think is very telling about the push for the LGBT movement over the last few years. They very actively want to destroy pure Christian civilization because they like it.
Yeah. And that's, and this, well, actually this leads me in, you've at the beginning there, you stumbled across something that I have another thought and I'm kind of curious as a question on. Falling items. Let's not have falling items. Here's another thing. It has gone too long. That's, by the way, our welcome tag team works because Mark feels very welcomed. He said I'm welcomed, so that worked well. But the agenda has gone on too far. The distinction, Dan says the agenda might have gone on too long instead of just too far. That's quite possible too. But here's another question when it comes to the young generation, because again, I think most of us know kind of there's a predictability when it comes to older folks. You got boomer voters, Gen X voters, millennial voters. There's some patterns here that we can predict. The youngest ones are always the very interesting, coming into the world, coming into this kind of public policy world or civic world, the culture and moral world. And one of the things I wonder, you touched on it when you said that most folks your age, you would tend to say they would fall somewhere in the camp of, apolitical or slightly left-leaning. How destructive has our entertainment-based culture been? To just it's not that people are, young people are liberal. Young people just don't care anymore. They're unplugged. They don't care about it. And did something like COVID, the lockdowns, this and that, has there been, or do we need something to push them far enough to realize, whoa, 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 you're actually encroaching into telling me what to do? Or is what they like to do just be sucked into a screen, which is what we were, pushed into doing? Does it not matter? Is there a chance of reaching some of these young people, whether or not they fall on one side of the scale or not? Or are we just so far into distraction culture, which I personally believe is very purposeful? That's not just by accident. That has happened so that people just stop paying attention, disengage, don't care. You can't get them back into basically even just voting every, twice a year or every other year. Mm-hmm. Is the young generation too far gone down that apathetic train, or can we actually bring them back to care about something? What do you think? What's your take? Now, I know you came out of an active college, that this is not the norm across the country, but I'm curious, do you think that's actually something that we can overcome? Is it too far gone? Is it not as far gone as it looks like to people like, my age and up, who are paying attention and engaged in these things? What do you think? Because that's something that I'm afraid of personally. Is it's not that I can't convince them we're right. They just don't care who's right. They want to be left alone to be entertained and sucked into their own world. I don't know.
Well, I think it's hard to carry on not caring for too long, because care is a very natural human impulse to care about what's going on and to want to. I mean, that's how, like Heidegger says, we interact with the world. We know we're in the world because we care about it.
Yeah.
So many will numb themselves through video game or drug or just endless social media use. But I think for a lot of people out there, even through these avenues of social media, it can actually be of benefit, because I think a lot of people who we're talking about people who feel like they're alone, when there are people at big universities, big liberal universities, that have these conservative sensibilities. These maybe falling into the online avenues is one of the best ways for them to not feel like they're insane, because what's important is to show people what's going on. What's going to wake people up, especially young people, is when they see the insanity. Actual footage of the Black Lives Matter riots in 2020.
Yeah.
Actual footage of what's going on in France right now. Actual footage of things like the Ukraine war. Actual footage of what's going on in the Planned Parenthood Center. When you actually see what's going on, when you, or that's why the movie we talked about last week, Sound of Freedom, that's why he records all of his missions, because it's much stronger to have actual evidence, which you can just put anywhere now, especially with the new Twitter regime, where you can share these things online now. It's much better to actually be able to see these things than it is to just read an article from like newworldorderdestroyer.net, which is incredible.
You know about newworldorderdestroyer.net too? It's one of my favorites.
Exactly. If you share that with somebody, they're not going to believe it. If you share a video, I think the Kyle Rittenhouse thing was good on this, because there was the media story that was like, oh, there's this white racist kid that killed these people, and he was just like walked down on the rampage when these peaceful protesters were out there. And I would see people talk about this and post about this, and I would be like, have you even seen the video? Like you could, there's a video of it. I'll go
videos.
Yeah.
And none of it even looks remotely like that version.
Exactly.
That you just
said. Yeah. And that's why he got off. That's why he didn't have to face jail time, because the evidence was clear that he was defending himself. So it's good, especially with Musk being in charge of Twitter now. It allows these kind of videos to spread more easily, because usually before you couldn't get videos on Facebook or Twitter. You would have to like go into the deep archives of the internet where the crazy people are. But now we can share these more openly, and I think that's good for people in my generation to be able to see what's actually going on. And wake them up.
Seeing is believing and feeling. And I mean, to your point, it's you said the word there, numbing. I mean, it's all of these things, whether it's neurological or emotional. These are muscles, essentially. The less you use them, the more numb and less sensitive they become. But you can, in fact, have that awaken and start to use it again. And I mean, if that's a good point. Which, by the way, side note, we talked last week quite a bit about the Sound of Freedom. We saw the Sound of Freedom this weekend. You should really go see it. Took the opportunity. They hit their 2 million mark. They actually surpassed it by double, but it obviously should have all of the attention. So if you haven't seen it yet, do go buy tickets and see it. It's important to see. It is a hard topic. It's not as hard to watch as I expected. Obviously, it's not graphic, but it is a very grisly topic. They handled it very well. If you don't want to, if you can't, if you already have, consider paying it forward through their program and buying a ticket for someone else, because it's a very important work. And to your point, how do I get people to care about this? I can show them, Tim Ballard says, and is finding great success in bringing awareness to an issue that is a moral issue. And people have the sensibility for it. They just need to be shown, oh my gosh, this is real. I feel, now that I've seen it, my heart urges me toward doing something about it. So I'm glad to know that you feel that way, because I know that some of us sometimes who are so into this, a lot of the folks who listen here, often it's worrisome that I'm not even going to be able to get these, folks coming into this world to engage in it, because no one cares anymore. So I've often wondered different people's opinions on that. I think that's important. We see, hold on, what do we got here? Someone, by the way, we've got at least one person who's definitely looking forward. We have the link, right? We have the link to the body maps of morality. Yeah, we've got that. That link will be coming down below. People need a real reason to care. That's why the left incentivizes so well. I think people need to see people as people, not just faces on feeds or handles in the comment section. That is absolutely accurate. And then the left gives people meaning. Yeah. So there's that's an interesting point, that it's gone on for too long, or not even that they're pushing too far, but that it's gone on for too long. I it's a tide starting to turn, because before, a company would go crazy out, but they never really got hurt. Target, there was a way to boycott Target over the bathroom thing, when they said when you could use whatever bathroom. That's years ago. I mean, compared to now where we are, that was years ago. And yet, Target, but it didn't actually result in anything. Right. Like the Target stock kind of dipped a couple of times, as opposed to Bud Light, which has now lost 30 something. I forget, they're in the 30s now. More than 30% of their month-over-month sales. Holy cow, that's business-ending numbers. Right. And Target is starting to suffer a similar fate too over some things. Now, people seem to actually be angry enough and pushed far enough to change their habits, especially their commercial habits, which heaven knows, when it comes to what they like, personal preferences in modern America, hard to break people of that. Boycotts are just not usually doable. That tells me we've gone on far enough or long enough, to Dan's point. I think that we're seeing the tide change, and my question is where that goes across the board. So let me see here. We've got some more. Man, the comment section is getting lively now. Americans are now. Here's an interesting statement. Americans are generally conservative and tolerant, even of radical opinions. But when an issue's been pressed too long and too loud, it exhausts the general public patience. I'm curious. Do you think that Americans are generally conservative, that mushy middle out there, or do you think that's kind of a split bag? Because I've thought both different ways on this over the last few years. I don't quite know.
Yeah,
someone agrees with that.
It's interesting because a lot of public opinion is shaped very deliberately, which we don't really like to think about, because we think that a lot of the times we're able to come to our own conclusions, and we are. But I do think that America, even though it may not be anymore, throughout its history has been a Christian country with Christian ethics and morals. And most people hold those morals, at least on a deep down level, if they don't have them explicitly laid out. And I think that things like transgenderism do directly offend that, which is why if it's pushed, it's interesting because, there's, as the comment said, that it's gone on for too long, but also I think what the left might be realizing is that it's just gone on too fast, because
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, the universities, the government, the three-letter agencies, they know how to shape public opinion ever since right after World War II, when all of the academies learned behavioral sciences, and they were like, okay, how do we shape a society so we can shape Germany to be what we want it to be now that we've taken down the Nazis, to prevent this from happening again? And it's not like they did that and then just put all the tools away. They kept developing those tools, because then communism came about and they had to do MK Ultra to continue to learn how to control a population.
You're saying the intelligence communities are running psychological operations on American citizens?
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. And I think that it's just gone way too quickly here. But I think you look at marriage, gay marriage legalization, that was just 8 years ago at this point. And already over half of Republicans are okay with gay marriage. It took less than a decade for them to absolutely crack us on this and destroy our position, and it's going to just continue to be that way, become continually accepting of it. So I think that I worry that the transgender issue will go a similar way.
Yeah. And honestly, and this is, and I'll close because I know we're coming here. PsyOps, yes. See, we got another PsyOps, yes.
Yeah.
Unrestricted warfare. So, I know we're coming here close to our 30-minute mark, so we'll kind of wrap it up. But I ask that because I would have tended to have said in the past, even 10 years ago, that I think the majority of Americans are really more like us. They're good. Even if they have some liberalities on certain things, again, there I go back to that. I hate that. Even if they agree with some of the more political, like the leftist stuff, and in some areas they largely will go our direction. I'm honestly not sure anymore, and I would lay a lot of fault, and this is kind of my summation. One of the biggest and most dangerous things that's been around a lot longer than the trans issue, than gay marriage, than anything else, is this I don't know, I wouldn't call it politically correct, but this moral relativism of personal autonomy. Not, that we don't have personal autonomy, not that that's not an actual value that we should uphold, but the morally relativistic side of it. You do whatever you want, you do what makes you happy, you do you. That has just pervasively been taught to society for generations now.
Yeah.
You should pursue a career that makes you feel happy. You should do this. We're not operating based on, am I a functioning member of society? Am I taking care of other people first? Am I creating a family and providing for it? It's all become very self-centered. What you want, even if it's not, we bend the moral to do what I want. It's my pronoun. It's my this and that. We're at an extreme version of that. But I feel like that subversion in society has been happening for the better part of half a century now, at least. And that underpins so many people's opinions of, oh, well, they're allowed to do that, which is why I kind of cringe when we talk about the trans issue and we say, oh, well, I hate the qualification. By the way, I dislike that when I hear someone who ought to know better say, oh, well, I mean, if adults want to do such and such, but with kids at least, I'm like, no, you're already giving half of the ground over because no, you're not allowed to do that because that's absolutely ridiculous. It's scientifically, biologically impossible. We don't tolerate that lack of basic, absolute, objective truth in society. We can't function that way. It inevitably will end up kids the way down because all you're doing is giving yourself half a leg, which we did civilly. Oh, let them have civil unions. It's just a contract. Well, I don't have a problem with anyone making a contract with anyone else, but that's not the point of this. The point is you're giving over half of it already and conceding something, and then we're just going to take it the rest of the way. I think that has gone on, and I worry that the majority of the population no longer is conservative in that regard because we've just kind of had that rot of personal autonomy. Well, you get to do what you want. And if you start from that position, even if you're protecting the kids for now, you're still allowing the rot to be over here. It rots the rest of the tree. All of the roots are going to go if you allow it. It has to, we have to have a certain level here. So conservatives, I agree with this. Here's someone I've never seen pop in the chat. Forza Jersey says conservatives need to normalize larger families, 3 to 5 kids. 3 to 5. Is that a larger family now?
Really 3 to 5, yeah.
3 to 5. Homeschooling. They can't just be extremely religious people anymore. No, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, if we take homeschooling is how we will tear them down. That's an easy victory for the right to make by taking your kids out of the public schools, refusing to let them be indoctrinated, refusing to let them be shamed for who they are, for being Christian or for being white or for being a boy or whatever they're going to tell them in the public schools. You can take them out of there and you can teach your kids yourself, like most people have throughout history, like God designed us to do, to be able to bring up the next generation. It comes naturally to us, it takes some work, it's going to take some financial resources, but what's the alternative? You save a few bucks, maybe get some extra snacks and go to the movies some more, but what, at the cost of your children's moral compass? I don't think it's worth it.
Sounds like you haven't watched enough Amazon documentaries. Amazon Studios want you to know that all homeschooling is a cult. There's no good reason to extract your children from society.
No good reason whatsoever. Give us your kids. Put them in our schools, and don't worry, we'll take care of them. The kids belong to the government now.
Well, I was about to say, if you believe that children and people are a property of the state, then by very nature, why would you want to take them away from parents' rights, parental authority over children? You psycho. There's another one. Our kids belong to all of us. Man,
Mhm.
I'm glad that one still rubs people the wrong way when someone says that, because that
Right.
is a pernicious lie that goes straight back to that.
Mhm.
The statists believe that children and people,
Mhm.
who's willing to say it over kids, because we have to protect them. Children and people are property of the state. That
Mhm.
is one of the most fundamentally Marxist,
It is Marxist, yeah.
secular humanist ideologies. That's incredible.
That's literally what they did in Jim
Yes,
Jim
it
Jones.
is.
They literally
Yeah.
communized the kids. They do that. That's a communist idea, you know.
So I think that the lesson of this is, I think that people out there, and you would agree with this, you said it, I think that the sensibilities are there, people can see it, we
Mhm.
can put the evidence in front of them. But I really do, I think that as much as I worry sometimes that America, the whole of it, is not as conservative as it used to be.
Mhm.
People really have had some of that just taken away from them. Their moral conscience has been seared that much that they're just not like they were even 25 years ago. I do also see the tide turning, whether it's too far, too long, a combination of both. I think that's
Mhm.
probably right. As Dan said, it's a little bit of both, or at least, quite a bit of the one. The tide is turning, and I think it really is an opportunity, like you said. It's time for us to be very bold in speaking the truth, to be very loud about speaking the truth, not obnoxious,
Mhm.
not without fact or founding or thinking it through and presenting a lot, good argument. But it can't just be a logical argument anymore. We also have to be bold in making people see things.
Right.
Like Sound of Freedom. No, you need to go see it. I
Right.
need you to see with your eyes and feel with your emotions. This is happening and it's wrong. Like my logic tells me, oh wow, this is an issue. My morals just break over this. It
Mhm.
hurts to see it. Good. I need you to have both of these understandings. And this flashed through somewhere here. Um, someone said something about, and I lost it. I apologize. The comment section is going, especially, is this all on YouTube? This is YouTube. You're doing well today. You guys are great.
Yeah, YouTube crowd. Where's the Rumble crowd at?
The Rumble, well, the Rumble crowd, hey, there is a Rumble crowd, but there are more watchers than they are typing.
Oh wow.
I can see all of you who are watching on Rumble, so you need to hop over here in the chat. There's only one of you that's going on.
Yeah, we want to hear from you too.
Yeah, and but anyway, yeah, and there's someone over here is talking about the same things. People just this is a good point. Someone right here saying that someone she knows, they're parting ways because this lady um, is wanting her autistic son to transition
Wow.
because she wants him to be happy. This is the
Yeah.
point. Oh, well, it's about being happy. This is the pernicious
Right.
lie that people have bought, and they're going for things that they never would have. And that's a good point. I see the same commenter here, PN517, saying God does not make mistakes, and the
He
goal
doesn't.
is never to make children happy, to have purpose, meaning, fulfillment. Which that brings it all back. I mean, I don't want to run on too much longer here, but I mean that brings it all back. I see we've got a lot of good stuff, and there's one of our regulars here, Christ crucified for you. I wonder where he's coming from. That's the screen name. Where you're coming from. It says, for those of us who are believers, may we repent and seek God's salvation for the nation's people. That's the bottom line.
Mhm.
And that's where we're coming from, is this is a moral crisis that we're in, a spiritual crisis. And we can keep having, there's someone else commenting on Rumble. See, you call people out, they jump in. We can continue to have cultural conversations, civic conversations, but it's a spiritual problem that needs a spiritual fix, if we're
Right.
being honest. So, I
Right.
mean, this isn't we're not a church, and this isn't a ministry necessarily, specifically, but all of us here recognize
Mhm.
that's how we fix this. Otherwise, we're just putting Band-Aids on it, and we're going to
Mhm.
deal with it again sometime in the future, some other way. But,
'Cause
you
can get
needs
a
to be
long way by sharing
awakening.
with people and telling them. But above all, it's important to pray because God is in control, and this nation certainly needs prayer. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And by the way, our PN517 over on Rumble, I know who you are. I'm not going to call out all the names on the internet live, though. I mean, if you want to put it in the chat, you can, but I'm trying to be a little bit more discreet. Well, there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff going on. Happiness versus fulfillment. These are two different things I think America needs to understand.
Yep.
And man, it is. We are in an interesting time, and I want us as conservatives to be very thoughtful about all of these issues. What the go to the why. That's how I was raised. It's but why? But why? Keep going to the next layer until we get to the fundamental bottom, foundational issue underneath whatever this discussion we're having is. Let's talk about that and get it right, and then we can come back up the ladder and get the right answers to these problems. We need to be having that because we are in a moment, I think, of people being ripe for the right opinion to sweep in and overcome this massive megaphone of radical stuff that's coming down the pipeline at them from video games, Hollywood, social media, government, news media. It's bonkers. What is the comedian? You sent me that comedian. He said something about, now I'm going back to the left because you guys totally have the heart in the right place compared to these weirdo right wingers. I'm kidding. It's because you have all of television and movies. That's exactly it though. Right. And that's scary when you think about it. If anyone is plugged into modern media, all of those are just a pipeline of garbage and we have to overcome that. So that's a big goal. Yeah. But that's where we are. That's it. We've gone about 35 minutes. You got a little punch to put on the end of it, or have we said everything?
Said my punch. Pray for America. Yep. And be courageous. Be courageous.
Pray for America. Be courageous. Speak the truth. Speak it in love, but speak the truth. Don't forget. I feel like all Christian, we talk about, we have to be loving. Yes. Speak the truth in love. Let's remember the other part of that too.
The truth will set you free.
The truth will set you free. All right. Well, there it is. We're gonna spin it off there.
Thank you,
and wait for another week. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for commenting. Hop in there. If there's something we didn't cover, if there's something you want us to cover next, an offshoot of this, send us an email, info@phyllisschlafly.com. Go to phyllisschlafly.com, sign up for the email list. We will send you along the resources that we've talked about. It'll also be pinned in the first comment, both on Rumble and YouTube. And Mason and I will be back next Thursday at noon for another very unauthorized caucus.